Hey, it's Larry. Welcome to Stewarding the Wealth Transfer. Well, I want to talk about the two most important news items of really this month. Did you hear that the Comex failed last night and it was the computer system broke down and it went offline for a number of hours? I mean, that's major news. You didn't hear about that? Well, are you aware of the blistering pace that silver is breaking through into new territory? Really in the way that Johnny Enlow kind of insinuated and prophesied that it would. Are you aware of that? I mean, that silver broke $57 today. It's up over 5% in one day. You didn't know that? You know why you didn't know that? You might not have heard, other people aren't talking about it, because the media is a huge part of how you control a civilization. We are controlled and influenced by the information that we have to take. And the mainstream media has poisoned our minds. It's sponsored by people who, I'm going to even say, are Luciferian at their core. And I know that sounds so extreme, but and I know that most of the pastors, if I know my pastors, that's their source of media. If they're conservative, they'll go to Fox. Well, Fox isn't conservative. It's Murdoch, the former owner of Fox, was no true patriot, but then I believe he sold, before 2020, he sold over 40% of Fox, and it's no longer a conservative. Yes, it leans more right than the other institutions, but when the narrative plays out and you only consider the box that the media gives you, that's how you control people. And the prophetic breaks through that, and it makes us look, or allows us to look where other people aren't looking. And I think it's a strategic part of successful investing. And now, is my biggest goal successful investing? No, but I want to do what God wants us to do. And I think that what God is showing, there's a lesson to be learned here, that we need to discipline ourselves with where we get information. And my last video was just like a 2.5-minute video about this new website that came out of nowhere at the end of October, and it was called Comex Visigoths. And if you studied the name of Visigoths, they were the people who essentially sacked Rome, and they kind of came out of nowhere, and they were the historically the people that took over the city of Rome. They conquered Rome. And so the people behind this video, I wondered at the time I said it, and history is proving it right. This is an information, essentially superhighway, and I'm getting more and more, and I'm going to provide some other ones that are, I think, media sites that you should consider, so it can help you change the way that you think. One of them is, I thought it was truly him, but I couldn't figure out why he would be saying the things that he's saying. But there is a YouTube channel. It's called Mind to Goals. And I think you should pay attention to it. It's not like you want to watch the whole thing, but they are literally using the likeness and the voice of Elon Musk to explain everything that Trump is doing. And I don't see it deviating in general from the way that I think things really are. Because, if 3 different people watch a car wreck, there's going to be 3 different stories of what happened. And the truth is maybe a combination of those perspectives, but there's many times that people tell a story because they only know part of it, or they think they know, but they weren't there and they didn't really see it. And so I think that you need to be really careful where you're getting your information, but you need to know that the Commodity and Exchange Index, the Comex, it failed last night, and it probably didn't fail. And I'm going to say, obviously I don't know all this. I've learned it from the channels that I watch, but you study it yourself. You find out if it truly continued true and accurate price discovery, because what I believe we're going to find out, and I'm saying this prophetically based on what Kim Clement said, but it's not unsubstantiated by people like Julie Green, who I really enjoy. But Kim Clement, when you study his prophecies about the NASDAQ, you can tell, if you have an open mind, that the NASDAQ comes to a conclusion. And there's like an enormous pause. And the way that he prophesies, it's actually news that, hey, the Comex is back on and it's actually a good investment. That's the time to invest in the Big E, is after the Comex goes down, but as it comes back on, the Big E in Kim Clement's prophecies will be available. And so you didn't know the Comex went down. You don't believe that the NASDAQ, you can't fathom that the NASDAQ would go down, but I believe that it will. And I've said it numerous times on the channel, and I'm putting my reputation on the way that I understand what Kim Clement said, that the NASDAQ will go down. And you're going like, well, Larry, why would it go down? It's because when they're more about the business of influencing the price of commodities and indices than they are about reflecting the value of those commodities, indices, and entities. And that's where I think that the Comex has gone wrong. There's 400 pieces of paper, IOUs, representing silver in the Comex for every 1 ounce of true silver on the exchange. So if you've got 399 monopoly dollars and then $1 in a pile of money, and somebody wanted to pay you in real bills, would you let them use monopoly money? Of course you're not going to. But that is what we've been satisfied with, and people have complained about it, but the government has not historically done anything about it. And it's interesting, even under Trump, what they're doing. I think that they totally know what they're doing, but I don't think that anybody would believe Trump if he said, hey, I don't think that the stock market is fair. Could you imagine if Trump said, hey, there's manipulation in the stock market, people are cheating, they've bought off politicians, and the politicians are changing the tax rules, and so Wall Street is dipping into your 401k because Congress is making you concentrate your 401k in ways that are very easy for hedge funds and private equity to manipulate. And you might, when I start saying that, either you totally believe me or your head just explodes and you disengage and you don't believe it. But I think that you need to begin to think about listening to things that you don't want to hear, because it could really, really impact your pocketbook as well as just your well-being, as we go forward. And so I think these are not times to think like you've always thought. And so many of the people who you're listening to are people that think like you instead of people who know what's really going on. And it's so easy to, the proverbial bury your head in the sand, and so many people are doing that. But I just really want to encourage you to not bury your head in the sand. You should be very curious about, why did the Comex go down? You should find out. You should determine not to believe just me, but you should find out, why in the world would the Comex fail right at a time that silver and gold manipulation were at a crescendo, and then the Comex goes down? Why would that happen? Why has silver gone up nearly $3 an ounce today? I would say that's probably the biggest percentage jump in history, maybe. I don't know that that's true, but I've not seen it all the years I've been paying attention to silver. But you should know. And I don't believe that they have control of it anymore. And Bix Weir is definitely not a godly guy, but he does know silver. And he says silver is going to have $1 days, and then it's going to have $2 a day, then it's going to have $5 a day, then it's going to have $10 days, and then it's going to have $20 days. And obviously, it's still got to go up and down. He said, hey, the $2 days are moving behind us, and we're going to come into $5 a day price increases. So I know that not everybody is able to take advantage of silver, but silver and gold are definitely in what Kim Clement prophesied as the 8 wells of blessing. And it's really interesting how much XRP has come down, and I can't imagine with all the EFTs and all the money off Wall Street flowing in to XRP why it hasn't exploded. So if silver is out of your wheelhouse, I think that ship is sailing. I'm not saying it's sailed, but let's think about the implications of this. If silver is going to explode, how is that going to affect other things? Well, the people that are betting against silver are going to have to cover their shorts. And I know I'm just saying a lot of stuff. Some of you don't understand, some of you don't. But what I'm saying is this: the prophetic people have talked about banking crisis. I've seen visions of Wall Street coming down. I've seen visions of the bond market exploding, and that used to seem like the farthest thing from the truth. I've also seen, as I've shared, visions of military people shooting in the street. And in a very small way, we just saw that the other day. 2 National Guard in Washington, D.C. were shot. I think we're going to see the bond market fall. I think we're going to see Wall Street crash. I think we're going to see more military engagement on the streets than we can even fathom in America. And if you don't believe that or can't get your mind around it, then I think you're going to be potentially victimized by it. But if you will get ahead of it, you can move your 401ks into metals, and you need to do it in the right way. You don't want to invest in SLV, or I think it's GLD. I'm not sure what the gold representation is, but the paper markets are getting eviscerated, and you need to have somebody who's storing that gold in its custody, not just a paper representation, because there can be, I think it's called a force majeure, and they just say, well, we're going to give you the last money that it was worth. Because when the markets are not accurate, what's going to happen, and I believe that this is going to happen, you're going to see the Comex is where price discovery is found in the United States. It's historically been in London, and for the entire history of the United States, basically London has been the financial hub of the world. I think that we're about ready to see that discontinued. And interestingly, Shanghai has started a gold and silver exchange. And in Shanghai, if you want to sell 1,000 ounces of silver, you have to put 1,000 ounces up. In America, you can represent 1,000 ounces of silver and never put the silver for sale. In Shanghai, you put 1,000 ounces in, then you can sell it. In America, there's the IOU. I'd like to sell 1,000 ounces of silver. You know, if you're registered on the Comex, I'm not. I mean, you have to be a big, and it's very limited. It's not transparent. It's opaque. It's very manipulated. And what this is to me is it's an illustration of how messed up America is, how messed up and devious England is. And it's really ironic that a communist country has got a better commodities exchange than America, and their prices have been 10% higher than ours. And you can't have, for something the size of a silver dollar, you can't have something worth 10% more in Shanghai and not, distort the markets. And so, well, you go, well, Larry, it's just silver. I don't have any silver. I don't have any gold. Why does that matter? Because if they can manipulate silver and gold, and I recognize it's a different market because the Comex is for commodities, NASDAQ is for, the Dow is one standard, the S&P is another, the NASDAQ, features tech stocks. It's an exchange that stocks are represented on. I believe that the NASDAQ is also manipulated, and the way I read Kim Clement, the NASDAQ is going to fail. I think that it's going to be silver that is going to cause a failure, that's going to lead to a cause of a failure of gold, and then that's going to lead to a failure of NASDAQ. And we're going to see this contagion, this financial contagion, and we're going to be shown. And then other things are going to happen. Now, how does that happen with the whole 8 wells? Well, one of the people that I mentioned last time said that there are people who are talking, and I'm going to make a reference of this. You go, well, Larry, where do you get all your ideas, Well, I care about what the prophets say. I care what I've personally learned, and I care what professionals are saying. But what's interesting is it's important in these days for us to hear what our leaders are saying, and we need to understand what they're thinking. And so when there are changes of government, changes of a regime, changes of leadership, changes in a culture and in a nation, people have to be unified in their knowledge. And because the deep state has controlled media, and Musk bought X, Twitter, and turned it into X, and so now they're not controlling that as much. And YouTube is getting its stuff, so they're not manipulating as much as they were, like they were during COVID. And so the media is a way that they control us, because if we can't have our voice. But what's interesting is I'm watching more and more people who are saying that they're representing the thoughts and the perspectives of what Trump is thinking if he could have a conversation with you. Now, he's smart enough, he's not going to really say what he thinks, but I would say that that's what truthers are. And I'm just going to get really crazy and say that I don't think that Donald Trump made his own choice to run for the president. The people that I watch, I think that, if you look at what Trump is saying on Truth Social, he's talking about tribunals, he's talking about the military is the only way. And I think that is where we're headed. I don't think that the injustices look up the definition of treason, the definition of sedition, and those are life and death matters. And yet we just think, oh, it's freedom of speech. You can just say whatever you want as long as you don't hurt somebody. And that's not the way that it is. You can't say whatever you want. If you talk about overthrowing a country, that can be sedition. If you talk about the leaders of our country are unjust, and if you make accusations that are against the Constitution, you can lose your life historically for that. Our education system has not taught us to rightly value the correct culture in all these ideas. So I'm just coughing out a whole bunch of things, but I'm saying the financial shift is hitting like a freight train, and this shift in the silver market, I think, is going to break, and I think it's going to break the gold market. That's an enormous market, more than 10 times bigger than the silver market. And then I think it's going to lead to a break in the NASDAQ. And you may go, well, that's just totally crazy. I don't believe it. That's fine. I'm not talking to you. But I'm going to share some videos that I'm watching. Here's one with Elon Musk, and here's the image of it, and here's the title of it, and it's actually not Elon Musk. And you go, well, then it's not real. Well, why would Elon Musk allow his image and his representation to be used in a consistent way that's just getting millions and millions of views if it didn't represent what he wouldn't want out there? I watched another one on David Nino Rodriguez, the boxer. And he's coming to God. He's not a believer. And just because somebody's a believer, I don't believe everything they say. I don't think everything that believers think. I disagree with the majority of a lot of, quote, Christian thinkers. And I'm not proud of that. It's just I think they're very rapture focused. They're very short term. They think it's unbiblical to be engaged in politics. They think that we should just drift apparently with culture. And I think that we should be initiating change in culture. And I think that we should be a force. The kingdom of God is going to come, and it's something to be reckoned with. And so, I think all these thoughts, I just wanted to get this out here. And why am I saying all this? Because I've been sitting on a video with Tammy, who wants to start a new channel, and I've been talking to her, and she lives in the town that I do. Leah from who went to Billionaire Boot Camp is doing a YouTube channel, and we kind of got together and talked to Tammy about how to start a new channel. And I want you to consider this next video that's going to come out is how you should start a new channel. And the reason that it's so important is because we need to know where there are true ideas, and we need to hear people's opinion, and we need to hear people that are unafraid of giving their opinion, and we need to have people passionately stand up and shout. And you need to not cower with sharing what you think is true, and then it allows people to come up to their own conclusions. And we have so many people that are paid to change their perspective, and that's a bought and paid for media, which I think is totally horrible. I think if you know that, then it's one thing. That's a media influencer. The way that you invest your money, it represents part of your life. Money is truly a portion of your life energy. It's represented in assets, and you have an opportunity right now to radically increase the assets that God has given you. And I think that that's one of the things, is that as the kingdom of God comes and God's will is done, He wants people who are godly, who will stand up and rise up. And so I appreciate you listening to my rant. If you haven't jumped in on silver and gold, it's not too late. But if you need to catch up on the other things, what's going to happen if Kim Clement was right about Brixton Metals? Now that silver is exploding, they're going to begin to move towards mining in Brixton Metals in the next few months, and I think that's just going to absolutely explode too. So XRP, I think, is going to explode too. I write about this in my book, The Parable of the Dinar, and it still sells really well. I'm going to let you here's the details of it, but thank you so much for watching today. You guys have a great day, and my next video will come out about why you should become an influencer, why you should begin to share the perspective of what God's teaching you, why you should unequivocally and without shame share what you think the truth is, so that people can have a perspective of that. And we need to learn how to listen to things that offend us. Before Obama, we didn't used to be offended, and now we feel shame if we speak against the group collective. But we need to stiffen our spine, find our backbone, and speak the truth in love, and not be swayed by especially money, but just manipulation. We need to tell the truth, and we need to intentionally seek out the truth. One of the channels I'm going to share with you, one of the videos I'm going to share with you, I believe almost everything the guy says, except he starts talking about aliens, and he starts naming these galaxies and these planets that these aliens come from. And it's just like, I realize as I listen to him, I think he's crazy when it comes to aliens. But the thing is, the Bible does talk about there are entities and powers and principalities, and I think those are demonic forces. But there's no doubt that there are different levels of entities, and I think they very easily could be represented by things that are not of this world, literally. So I think it's important, if somebody's making sense broadly, to listen to what they're saying, and even if you don't agree, it's fine. You don't have to agree with. I don't care if you don't believe everything I say. I hope you believe some of the things I say. But if I'm consistently wrong, then don't listen. But I think you need to be careful, and you need to be intentional with the media that you take, and your media intake, and the way that you bring information in and the way that your money goes out. Be blessed. I have a fun interview with a good friend, and that will come up next week as well. So you guys have a good one. Have a great week.